Earlier this week, we saw a general election poll that showed Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump in a virtual dead heat, but it also showed Libertarian candidate Gary Johnson just shy of double digits at 8%, forcing the presumptive nominees of the major parties beneath the 40% threshold. Former Massachusetts Governor Bill Weld is Gary Johnson's running mate on the Libertarian ticket and good enough to join us now from Boston. Governor, we appreciate your time today.
It's a pleasure, Josh.
I want to begin by asking you simply about that 8% number we saw in the poll. Would that be, come November 9th, a number you'd be satisfied with?
Oh, no, I don't think Governor Johnson and I would be in this if we didn't think there was a path to going all the way. Right now, we've been hovering around 10% in the polls, and the party wisdom seems to be you got to get to 15% to be in the debates. But if we get there, we think we can continue to grow. And if you take 5 from each party, then you're at 25%. Then you're playing in the finals.
So what is the path from 8 to 15%? Again, as you and Governor Johnson have both stated with us here, is really the point to get up on that debate stage?
Well, that's right. And until that time, we're busy about getting as much earned media as we can to get better known, because we really just started a few weeks ago. The convention was just a few weeks ago. And we think as the message gets out that the two-party system is somewhat broken and both parties are kind of calcified, kind of stuck. And we're the folks who have experience in government. We're both two-term governors, and we're fiscally conservative, and we're socially liberal and open. And that's a good combination. That probably speaks for half the people in the United States. So that's the game plan. Get that fact known, and the rest of the knitting will kind of take care of itself.
Donald Trump has dismissed you and your running mate as fringe candidates. What's your response?
Well, it's not fringe to be socially liberal and open and tolerant on issues like a woman's right to choose and gay and lesbian rights. It's not fringe to be fiscally responsible and have balanced budgets. When Gary and I were in office, we were each rated the fiscally most conservative governor in the United States. You know, we cut budgets in real terms. So we've been there and done that. And Washington could use a pinch of that, you know. They say the states are laboratories of democracy. We were both successful two-term governors of blue states. We governed as Republicans, so by definition, we showed we know how to reach across the aisle to get things done. That's a message that, if it gets out there, is going to resonate.
You know, something I've asked many guests here in the last 6 weeks or so, roughly that time ago on one of the Sunday shows, RNC Chairman Reince Priebus said derisively that this country is not Italy, where you have 12 different parties and everybody fits neatly into a box. But I wonder, do you see this election cycle, at least thus far, as something of a referendum on the two-party system as we know it?
I absolutely do, Josh. And I think that if you turn the clock back, the old Whig Party, which broke in half in the 1850s, it was the predecessor of the Republican Party. And there was part of it became the Know-Nothing Party, and it was anti-immigrant, a lot of violence, a lot of conspiracy theories. It's the direct forebear of the Trump movement. And it broke up and went into nothingness, and the rest of the party went on and elected Abraham Lincoln. So I think that could happen again. I think you're going to see, certainly there's a schism in the Republican Party, whether it breaks in half or just breaks in 1/3 and 2/3. I think there's going to be a realignment. It may not be entirely this cycle. It may take 2 cycles, but it could happen this year.
It has seemed as though at times that Donald Trump has been running against the party of which he is the presumptive nominee as much as he is running against the Democrats. Interestingly as well, 2012 Republican nominee Mitt Romney, someone I know you know well, said this week that he wished that you were at the top of the Libertarian ticket, says he thinks you'd be a great president. Would you say that your politics are closer to that of a Mitt Romney, perhaps, than either of the two major party candidates this year?
Oh, I think Governor Johnson and I are probably closer to Mitt Romney than either of the other two candidates. Sure, because Mrs. Clinton is not what I would call a fiscal conservative, and Mr. Trump, it's difficult to pin him down. He's candidly, he's all over the place. So yeah, no, Mitt and I are quite close, and I was flattered that he said nice things about me, and I think there's a lot of people who feel the way Mitt Romney does, and they may be Republicans, some of them are Democrats, and we're hopeful that they're going to see that the Libertarian Party is the way to send a message that we're not happy with the offerings we got, So send them a message and take the third way, which is the way that most Americans agree with, to be fiscally responsible and socially, welcoming and inclusive. Liberal, for want of another word.
I know part of the party platform does not in any way include interventionism. Interestingly, Hillary Clinton's record as Secretary of State came into sharp focus this week with the Benghazi Committee's release of its final report on the events surrounding the 2012 attack there. Do you believe that Secretary Clinton helped make this country and really this world less safe?
You said less safe? I thought she was, by and large, a good Secretary of State. Benghazi is just a nightmare from start to finish. Gary Johnson and I start out with a presumption of non-intervention where boots on the ground and American blood on foreign soil are concerned. We think that the first reaction should not be let's intervene there, and that should require a lot of sober thought as to the amount of the American interest involved before we think about boots on the ground. We do think that we need an invincible defense, and in order to have an invincible defense, you have to project marked superiority in military force, both air and naval, both in the air and at sea. I travel the world a lot, and I know that in the Middle East, the Arabs are all worrying about that Fifth Fleet steaming out of Bahrain Harbor and going back to the Gulf of Mexico. In the Pacific, it's the Pacific Fleet. If they move 10 inches, everybody in China and Japan and the Philippines, gets a cold. So the whole world is watching every extension of American power, and we can't be isolationist. I think Mr. Trump, to tell you the truth, is a neo-isolationist. I think his tirades against free trade and open borders and against all kinds of other people, he's the one who wears the word isolationist, and I'm sorry that my old friend Mrs. Clinton has turned her back on the Trans-Pacific Partnership, which is a treaty negotiated by President Obama that would give us, the United States, a seat at the table with 11 other Pacific Asian countries without China being in the room. That's got to be good for America's competitive position in Asia. So we'd be fools to turn our back on that. But both major parties are saying, no, we're not going to do it. We're too scared.
Well, it has been, you mentioned free trade and trade agreements by the U.S. have obviously been in the crosshairs of Donald Trump. And in fact, it seems he's really moving to the left of Hillary Clinton on the issue. What do you make of Donald Trump's position specifically with regard to trade?
I think almost all of Mr. Trump's international positions are not only wrong, they're illegal. He would, violate the NAFTA treaty. He would violate our obligations under the World Trade Organization. You just can't do that as the President of the United States and say, I'm going to put a 45% tariff on anything from China, a 35% tariff on anything from Mexico, make them pay for the new incarnation of the Berlin Wall. I mean, the Berlin Wall was a horrible idea in the first place. It was a stain on the entire second half of the 20th century, and Mr. Trump wants to recreate it. It's like he, got up in the morning and said, how can I have the most toddy-headed proposals in foreign policy imaginable? He's talking about arming the Japanese and the South Koreans with nuclear weapons. Okay, nuclear proliferation is the #1 threat facing the world today. It's the threat of extinction. To say we should have nuclear proliferation instead of the opposite, I can't even begin to tell you how off base this guy is on foreign policy. It
certainly suggests why both perhaps major party candidates are thought to be so untrustworthy as per the polls. The polls have, though, suggested that specific to the notion of trustworthiness, that the electorate finds Hillary Clinton perhaps in the same ballpark as Donald Trump. I want to ask you, though, about a piece of news dominating the cycle today, this private meeting between Attorney General Loretta Lynch and former President Bill Clinton amid the ongoing investigation into Hillary Clinton's use of a private email server. How concerned do you think we should be considering what has happened and the fact that as yet Loretta Lynch has not recused herself outright from this case?
I'm willing to take them at their word that was a chance meeting in an airport and there was, chance changes of schedule. So I think it probably was just a chance meeting. And if the Attorney General, she was a good prosecutor. I was a prosecutor in the Justice Department for 7 years, and we like people like Loretta Lynch and Jim Comey. So I have confidence that between the FBI and the AG's office that there's not going to be any hanky-panky or funny business there. They're going to call that one on the merits. And I've stated my view, which is that on the merits, I find it very hard to see evidence of criminal intent there on the part of Mrs. Clinton. And that's not just a layman's view. I was head of the criminal division of the Justice Department under President Reagan.
Governor Weld, as always, we very much appreciate your time today.
Thank you, Josh.